What's going on, growers? It's James Prigioni coming to you live from Jersey. Today, I'm going to show you how to force tomato plants to produce more fruit and less leaves, leading to earlier, more consistent production. Let's go! I have been growing tomato plants for over 13 years now, and over that span of time, I have developed some of my own interesting ways of tricking tomatoes to focus their attention on producing lots of fruit that ripens early, grows huge, and continues to produce late into the season. Here is an indeterminate tomato plant. It will grow like a vine, similar to a cucumber or melon. This thing will continue to grow and produce throughout the season until either a disease or a frost kills it. If I don't prune this plant and tie it to a stake, this thing will sprawl out on the ground and get super bushy. The reason the plants would get bushy is because of the way tomatoes naturally grow. They all follow a similar growth pattern. Once we understand that pattern, we can manipulate it and force our tomatoes to grow in the specific way we want them to. Here is another indeterminate tomato. Notice when it's young, it's growing up a single stem. You can follow the main stem right here. And at the top, you can see this is where the new leaves are unfolding from. This is the head of the vine, and it will keep unfolding leaves and growing. As we come back down though, notice how in between the sun leaves and the main stem, there is a growth point. Another head of the vine that is growing from the crotch of the tomato plant. This right here is known as a sucker. If we allow all these tops or suckers to grow, the plant would get really bushy. It's almost like from one tomato plant, other tomato plants sprout out between the crotch of the stem and also the leaf. This thing grows just like a normal tomato plant would. Here is a sucker that I allowed to grow. Let me cut it off and show you what I'm talking about. Snip it right there. Here is the sucker that we just removed. If we want, we could put this in water, root it, and it would grow into another tomato plant. Look at the pattern and the way it grows. It grows the same exact way as just a normal tomato plant would. And it will continue to do that and grow in the same pattern of growing straight up, unfolding leaves at the top. Then you would get some flowers. You can see them back here. Then as it continues to grow, new tops would form between the stem and that sun leaf. Basically, the whole thing would grow more and more tops, almost like mini tomatoes growing out of the one tomato plant. You would think that's fantastic. More tops means more flowers and more fruit. Well, that could be true, but actually when it comes down to it, for tomatoes, less tops and less suckers, less leaves will actually have a bunch of major advantages. Here I have 20 tomato plants growing in 20 square feet. When I prune and tie my tomatoes, each plant only takes up 1 square foot because I'm growing them vertically. Also, when I prune my tomato plants, like I'm going to show you right now, my plants have higher production and have less chance of getting disease issues while also fruiting earlier, because when I grow them like this, they have better light distribution and better airflow. Let's get into pruning. The first thing we want to do, whether it's a determinate or indeterminate tomato, is remove these lower leaves, especially ones that are in contact with the soil, because these can get diseases and then spread them up your plant and even spread them to other plants around. So first we're just going to remove these lower leaves and get rid of them so they don't get diseases when they're in contact with the soil and spread them. We removed most of the lower leaves on this plant. Now what I want to do is show you the most basic version of pruning, and after that I'll get into some more advanced techniques that I came up with myself. Here is a tomato plant, and right here is a sucker growing out of the crotch of the plant. I will remove these to allow the plant to basically only have one main growth point at the top where the leaves will unfold from. This will result in a plant that produces and ripens fruit 2 weeks earlier than an unpruned plant. Just think about it. If we have one plant with one top and there's a whole root system to support that, that's going to be less stress on the plant and will allow the plant to focus on the production of fruit and the ripening of those few sets of fruit. As opposed to a plant that you let sprawl along the ground, and if you let all the suckers grow, and all the tops, say that there's 20 suckers that you allow to grow that are basically 20 tomato plants. Now you have one root system supporting 20 plants essentially. And when the fruit starts to form on all those suckers, now you have one root system that's trying to support and ripen all those tomatoes essentially at the same time. That's going to be a lot on the plant. Instead, you could prune it so that you have one top mainly and one root system to support that. Now, when the fruit begins to ripen, that whole root system can support just that one plant. You get quicker ripening fruit and plants that are less stressed out. Pruning your tomatoes will also allow you to grow a number of different varieties in a small amount of space. If I let my tomatoes sprawl, they take up about 4 square feet each. In a 20 square foot area, that means I could only plant 5 varieties because they each take up 4 square feet. But when you prune your tomatoes and grow them vertically, like I am right here, I'm able to grow 20 different varieties of tomatoes in 20 square feet. Or if you want, you could just grow, say, 5 of your favorite varieties. This way though is more efficient because not only are we growing vertically and getting more space, but if we have 20 plants, say something happens to one of our plants, I've got 19 left. So that's like harvest insurance. Instead of having 5 plants, if something happens to 1 or 2 of those, you only have a few plants left. Let's get into the most basic version of pruning. We already removed those lower leaves. That's one of the first things you want to do. We also want to make sure that when we're going from plant to plant, that we spray our pruners with some isopropyl alcohol. This will disinfect it. So if there's a disease on one plant, we're not spreading it to the other plants. This is just a good idea, especially when you're going from one plant to the next. Let's get into pruning. Here's our plant. We've removed some of those lower leaves, but if you notice, I left the suckers right there just to show you how we remove them. The best time to get their suckers is when they're small like this, and you could just peel it off with your finger. It's very simple, just like that. Another one over here, we'll take this sucker off, and then we'll also take this sucker off. This is how you do it, just removing it with your hands when they're young, which is the ideal way to do it. If your suckers are a lot larger, I'll show you just in a little bit how I remove those. Taking this off will redistribute the growth energy of our plant. And there's another one right up here. We'll grab this one as well and just pop it right off. I'm also going to remove this other lower leaf right here. So it's open at the bottom and there's a lot of ability for the plant to get some good airflow, which is really important to not have any diseases. As we move up this plant, we'll notice that now there's no additional tops. There's only one top at the actual top right here where the leaves are unfolding from. That's perfect. That's exactly what we want for a young plant like this. The thing is, as the plant gets larger, there's a few adjustments that we want to make. Now that we know what a sucker is and how it grows, we can actually leave a few of them on the plant and use them to our advantage. Let me give you an example right here. So essentially, as this tomato plant continues to grow up this string, it's going to start flowering and setting its fruit. The fruit is going to be hanging off the sides and it's going to get good airflow and good light, which is important to help ripen that fruit faster. But if it's a beefsteak tomato and we live in a location, say down south, or even if it's around here and we get some really, really hot sunny days, a big stretch of them, then those tomatoes that are beefsteaks that are getting exposed to the sun directly, if that happens for too long, then your tomatoes can actually get sunburn. And that's known as sun scald on the plants. It'll form like this grayish, leathery patch on the outside of your plant. That's essentially from too much direct sunlight. So to help prevent that, mainly for our beefsteaks around here where I live, what we can do is allow a few suckers to grow in the center of the plant. These will grow out and provide a little bit of shade for that fruit. This way the fruit doesn't get sun scald. So as those beefsteaks get taller and start to set fruit, leave a sucker or two in the center. That will actually benefit your tomato plant overall. By understanding how a tomato plant grows, we can also boost production. Here's how I do it. I allow a few suckers to grow throughout the tomato plant. Then I allow those suckers to produce fruit, but I don't allow that sucker to produce any additional suckers. Let me show you exactly how I do it right here. Right here is a tomato plant. Here's the main stem coming up right here. And then off the side, you'll notice I allowed a sucker to grow right here. This sucker is continuing to grow. It will grow just like a tomato plant. We've got the sun leaves. We've got the top at the top right here. and then in between the sun leaf and the main stem, suckers will grow. For this side one that I allowed this sucker to grow out, I won't allow any additional suckers or tops to grow between these. We only want the one we're growing, and then we want it to fruit. You'll notice right here where the flower is. I'll allow this fruit to produce, but I won't allow any additional suckers to grow. If I allow that to happen, then I'm going to get more fruit, so a fruit set that comes off that sucker, but I'm not allowing more suckers to grow. If I did, the plant would start to get really bushy, and that one sucker would start to become, more plants, and it would throw off the balance of the plant. Instead, I can just allow one sucker to come out, allow one top on that, one set of fruit, and it boosts my overall production while still allowing the fruit to ripen quickly. You may have noticed I'm wearing a different shirt than what I usually do. This is some of the new merch that we just dropped. I thought today would be the perfect video. We've got the tomato starting from seed along the growth stage. This is probably where we were today in pruning, all the way up to the production stage. Underneath it, it says, "Let it grow." I'm really happy with the way it came out. I think it looks awesome. And it's a little play on that "Let it be" from the Beatles, but everything has to relate back to the garden. I'm just thrilled with how it looks. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think about it. And if you do enjoy it, check it out over at teamgrow.us. As the plants grow through the season, the same pattern will play out. The leaves unfolding, and then you'll have the stem forming. And between the sun leaf and the stem, you'll have in the crotches, the suckers forming. And as long as we just continue to prune the plant in the same way that I showed you earlier, then that will continue growing up this string. That's why I love growing plants on a trellis like this, because as it continues to get taller and taller, we train it to more of a single stem. What we can do is actually release a button at the top of this. This will lower our string down, and this will lower and lean our plants and make it so they're at a really nice, convenient, manageable height when we're either harvesting or continuing to prune our plants. By using this style of pruning, what we're doing is we're redistributing the growth energy, and we're switching what the plant focuses on. So instead of growing a bunch of tops with a whole host of leaves, some of them unnecessary, we're changing how the plant grows, and we're forcing it to focus its attention on the production of fruit and also ripening that fruit. So instead of a bunch of leaves, we're left with a bunch of fruit. We now know how to prune our tomato plants. In the basic version, when the plants are young, we start by removing all the suckers except that main top. Then as our plants get larger, especially for our beefsteaks, we leave a few suckers at the center to shade out some of that fruit so it doesn't get sun scald. In the advanced version, we also leave a few additional suckers throughout that plant to get some extra fruit production, and that just kind of boosts it, and it's a really convenient way to get more out of your plants in a small amount of space. But what do we do if our tomato plants are a bit larger and they already have really large suckers on them? Let me show you what I do right here. If we have a large tomato plant like this that's already relatively grown with large suckers like you can see right here, what we don't want to do is come out and in one day remove all these suckers and just basically hack the plant down. That would just cause way too much stress. If we have big suckers, then what we can do is remove the suckers over a period of a few days. Let me show you what I would do with this plant right here. Notice as we go low, even down here, we have a sucker. That was a leaf I cut off right there. There's a sucker. It's a big one. It's growing from here all the way off the side. I would want to remove that one. There's another sucker over here. I'm going to start from the bottom. Starting from the bottom, removing those will help immediately for the plant to be less bushy. So here's a sucker here, a pretty large one. I'm going to remove it just like that. Take that out. We could replant it if we want. Now here's another sucker, and there's a leaf right underneath it here. I'm going to remove this leaf, and I'm going to remove this sucker right here as well. This one's not as big. This is a healthy plant, so I'm going to remove this sucker on this side here. And I'll remove this sucker right here, which is between the leaf, like that. Now as we go up, this sucker is much smaller, right there. I'll take that off, just with my finger. And there's another one on the other side that I'll remove too, just with my finger. Now, this plant has a main stem growing right here, and one sucker going off the side. Notice this sucker. This thing is a big sucker. It's already large, so I wouldn't even remove this one because it's already so large. It would cause a lot of damage to the plant if I cut it off right there. So I'm going to allow this plant to grow with 2 tops. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that as any new suckers form on either of these tops, like you notice right here, I'm removing all those suckers. So essentially, this plant will grow with 2 tops, which is perfectly fine. Actually, allowing plants to grow with 2 tops can sometimes be more productive if you're growing like up a stake. It doesn't make sense for me here because my plants are already so close, but having a plant with 2 tops is fine. It's not, the pruning method isn't about only allowing your plants to have 1 top or only allowing them to have 2 tops. It's more about just focusing the plant on the production because that's what we want to focus on. So when we go out and remove the majority of the suckers and we don't allow the plant to just keep bushing itself out, we are refocusing the growth energy on the production of fruit and ripening that fruit rather than wasting that growth energy on the production of new tops, new leaves. So really, if you come back in, this tomato plant is pruned fine. Now it's up a single stem to here where it breaks into 2 stems, but what I'll do is just continue to tie these 2 stems to the string. Just make sure that when you're pruning, you are not removing so much of the plant in one day that it stresses the plant out too much. If you want, you could do this same pruning over a 2-day period. Another thing I love doing is, like I showed earlier, using that isopropyl alcohol. It seems like when I spray my pruners with isopropyl alcohol and then prune them, it's almost like the wounds get cauterized and close up quicker than when I don't use it. So I think that's a nice thing. Another thing is, the day today, it's a little misty, it's a little rainy. This isn't the ideal day to prune your tomatoes. I would like to prune them if it was a little cloudier, not as wet and rainy, because when we're cutting these plants, we are kind of opening up, making wounds that could expose the plants to potential to get some diseases. So it's better to do this on a day where the sun's out a little more, not a super hot one, but when it's a little sunnier, and make sure you use that isopropyl alcohol. That will really help prevent spreading diseases from one plant to the next. Let me prune this tomato plant now, just to show you how I do it really quickly. I've already pruned it once. I took off a lot of the lower leaves. We've got a sucker here growing. I'm going to remove that. Another sucker over here. Just pop these off with our fingers. Another one here. Every crotch will have a sucker, so keep an eye on them and move your way up. And this one doesn't have well, this one right here, you can see already formed into a sucker. This plant is like a double top. I could remove this if I want, but I'm not going to because it's growing up a stake. I'll allow this double top to grow. Now we have one plant growing up 2 tops that will tie to the stake. For some people, pruning can be like a bit overwhelming and confusing. In reality, it's not. It's all about understanding the sucker, when to remove it, how to remove it, and how that affects the plant. A cool thing about pruning is if you do make a mistake when it comes to tomatoes, that's fine because the tomato plant is going to continue to grow in this same pattern. It's going to continue to unfold those leaves, and that same pattern is going to play out. So if you mess up one time, maybe you could fix it the next time because the plant will just continue to grow. It's a vine, it's vigorous. Don't worry about making little mistakes. Just make a cut and then see how that affects how the plant grows. Then that can help you understand how the next cut will affect the plant in the future. Overall, pruning is a lot of fun, and it's a blast to be able to go out there and increase your production by doing just a few simple little things. It feels like, I don't know, it feels like you can take part in the growing, and it feels like what you do is truly making a big difference, and I find that to be just a really fun part about pruning tomatoes. When you prune your tomatoes and you grow them up a single stem or a stake just like this, overall, each plant will have a lower production than if you just allow them to sprawl along the ground. But your plant, you can get a higher production per square foot because in 1 square foot, you could put 4 plants as opposed to in a section, if you have a 4 square foot section, you allow it to sprawl, that's only 1 plant. So overall, your yield will be higher per square foot. although it will be lower per plant, but that will result in fruit that ripens quicker. Because going back to what we talked about earlier, when you have one plant with just a few tops that are supported by a whole root system, that's a lot better than having one plant with like 20 or 30 tops with only one root system supporting that. When it comes down to it, it's about balancing the plant out between leaf production, fruit production, and root size. When you can get them all perfect, that's when you get tomatoes with a high level of production that ripen quick and taste fantastic. That's today's video, growers. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. I truly hope that you get out there and try your hand at pruning some of your tomatoes. Don't prune all of them. Just grow some tomatoes in the way you've always grown them, whether you grow them in a cage or let them sprawl, and then try your hand at pruning some tomato plants and see if the pruned ones do better for you and produce later into the season with less disease issues than the ones you don't prune. Just by allowing the plant to have better access to light, have better airflow, and reducing the stress by not having the plant try to produce so much, that should give you plants that produce later and ripen earlier. Plus, if you combine some other techniques like growing a early producing variety, if you combine that with pruning, you can get tomatoes super early in the season. And when they're indeterminate, they won't stop kicking out fruit until essentially, the frost comes. When it comes to your determinate tomatoes, we didn't talk much about them. The only pruning you really want to do when it comes to the determinate tomatoes is just removing some of those lower leaves. You don't want to remove a lot of those tops because your determinate tomatoes, they'll essentially just fruit one big fruiting cycle one time. So by removing some of those tops, that could actually reduce your overall harvest. So don't prune determinate tomatoes like this. This is just for indeterminate tomatoes that grow like vines, similar to your melons and your cucumbers. Overall, I had a blast out here. I want to mention that you guys need to go over to teamgrow.us to check out the community where we have over 1,500 members on there that are constantly posting. We're all on there together. We're sharing what we've learned. We're coming together to try to grow a better future. That's the whole goal. So check it out at teamgrow.us. I also want to mention a thank you to one of our new channel members, Brent Davis. Thanks for being a part of Team Grow. Thanks for having your hand in everything we're doing out here. Overall, I had a blast with this video. Tomatoes are my favorite crop to grow, and they're my favorite crop to grow not only because of the fruit, but because we can go in there and manipulate the tomatoes to grow more and switch it up by doing some pruning. They just feel like so hands-on. I find so much joy in the pruning process, and I think I don't know, there's something about it that I love doing, and they're overall my favorite crop to grow. Let me know down in the comments if there's a crop you love growing, if tomatoes are your favorite. I would bet that they probably are, because they got to be one of the overall best crops you can grow in a backyard garden. Also, let me know if you have different pruning techniques or some more advanced styles that you think I should add into my pruning. I'm trying to come up with the best possible method so people can grow as much food at home as they possibly can. That's today's video. Hope you got something out of it. We'll be back at another one real soon. We